The rollout of coronavirus vaccines has propelled value stocks to their best performance compared to shares in growth companies in 15 years. That's according to a report by Citibank. The performance of the companies in MSCI's value index, which comprises businesses in slower growth and old economic industries such as energy and financial services, against the growth index, which includes sectors such as tech, has outperformed the growth index by 14% in US dollar terms since Pfizer became the first global drug maker to unveil an effective coronavirus vaccine in November last year. The report also shows that the best relative performance by the long unloved value sector, which many investors had neglected as they focused on fast-growing technology businesses since 2006. Stocks moved broadly higher for the week, lifting most of the major benchmarks to new records. Investors seemed to remain focused on fluctuating longer-term bond yields and discounts they place on future earnings, resulting in substantial swings in technology-oriented Nasdaq Composite Index. Well, joining me live via Skype from the United Kingdom to give more insight as we analyze the performance of global stocks amid COVID-19 vaccine demand is an investment analyst, stocks coach, and the founder of Wealth Hackers, Mr. Gbenga Onifade. Mr. Onifade, thank you very much. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
I always like to start with the economic situation all around the UK with the national lockdown still on. What's been playing out? Take us through how this has affected businesses, both small and big, large corporates. What's playing out? Take us through this. It's been a while we had you on the show.
Yes, thanks. The vaccine-led recovery is arguably the most important factor for the stock market around the world. Generally, if we're looking at recovery, there's actually been a stark different trajectories in major countries. So the first dose of vaccine was administered. United Kingdom, even though it was the first country to start vaccination and is still the lead among the nations, followed closely by the United States. If you compare it to other countries rather. But overall, though, in comparison, the European Union is lagging, and China is actually very far behind. They're showing very little progress throughout the lunar region, which is the Chinese New Year. So generally, the economy actually it's been a bit on a downward trend in the UK, while in America they are actually looking towards recovery. So generally, overall, economies are, they're actually breathing a bit of a sigh of relief worldwide. UK has been a bit disappointing. But yeah, if you look at globally, if you look at America or the European Union, yes, they are. And even think about it, just yesterday it was announced that France are actually going into the third lockdown for another 1 month, even though it's a light lockdown. But yeah, that would affect the economy on that side again, which is a neighboring country here.
But the setback for the AstraZeneca's vaccine is also taking its toll on the performance of the market. How does this come to you?
If you think about it, overall, this vaccination is, it has some bottlenecks. It comes with some risk. And if you look at the risk, for example, you've got to think about the raw materials. You've got to think about IT challenges, and even the wastage at the point of care, labor requirements. So, and there's a lot of competition, even quality assurance. So for many reasons, there's that debate about which country is going to lead the race, and that's actually not even the big problem. I think everyone's just desperate to get to the top of the things. However, if you are desperate to get your country back online again, the minute you see a flaw in any of these vaccines, I think you just want to reject it. You don't want to take that chance, because ultimate desperation could lead into further flaw, which could bring you, it could set you back further than where you started from. So that might be one thing. But remember, AstraZeneca is only one of many hundreds of companies that are in this race to get their vaccine as the key leader in the world.
Let's follow that up. That there seems to be no silver lining for the crude oil market, which had Brent crude edging up $70 per barrel. Seeing setbacks for the vaccine campaign, we've talked about that. Now, how long do you think this will go before it begins to beat a retreat?
So it's not just the crude oil, to be honest, because there has been a rotation. Investors have actually been rotating the money into cyclical stocks. And when I say cyclical stocks, these are stocks that rely on, the expansion and the contraction of the economy for them to move. Even though if you look at oil generally just tends to, it stands on his own rule. It's got a different governing body. And when we're talking about cyclical stocks, for example, we go the banks, the retail. So we got banks, got technology, you got retail, even oil is included. But most of the time, because of the vaccine rollout now, and everyone is a bit concerned about because interest rates is quite low. Okay, now investors are concerned about interest rates getting back to normal, so they're very, very cautious. And as a result of that, the bond yield has actually been rising, which is putting pressure on the So overall, I think it's more about investors being overly conscious. They don't know what to expect. And despite the fact that the Fed chairman in America, for example, has actually been coming out a few times, as 2 days ago, saying, guys, we will do what we have to do to make sure we get the ball rolling, even regardless of inflation rising. We will ensure that the interest rate is kept down or kept low. So that hasn't actually particularly affected the crude oil. But what's affected the crude mostly are just investors uncertainty. As you can tell, that's the most important thing. Which when you're talking about the market does not like uncertainty. It doesn't like anything at all. And investors are being cautious. They're taking their money out and they are rotating it typically, and that's why all the growth stocks, which has actually been amazing, and technology stocks, they've all been on a downward trend. And whatever the investors see as sign of life, that's where they put their money. But it's been mostly cyclical. I think people as well, they're preempting the economy getting back, but they're not willing to leave there for too long, just because they don't know what's going to be this new normal. And this new normal actually affects investors too, because investing is not that just straightforward as you just leave the money there right now. I think there's a little bit of uncertainty which is lurking, but no one wants to sleep on the bike, like they say.
True, no one wants to sit. But many times we see investors liking to sit on the fence. They are neither here nor there. Let's now look at investors' confidence at the moment. Regaining it globally won't be a tea party. What are you thinking of? Some said before we could go back to maybe close to normal, it could be around 2022.
Well, one thing according to McKinsey, actually, they said, with the way things are going on around right now, with the risk we've got with it, if we want to get to the COVID-19 herd immunity, the United States would have to administer about 2.4 to 3.5 times as many vaccine doses as it did during annual flu vaccinations. There's a threat that it might just happen to the UK again, the third lockdown. Nobody knows. But there's been huffs and puffs out there, with France not getting back until after Easter again. So nobody knows what's lying ahead, even though they are actually saying, okay, it's going to be a light lockdown because schools are being open. UK is still technically under lockdown. America is not under lockdown, but a lot of rules are being enforced. And some people are saying we probably might just have to live with this thing. If you think 2022 or 2024, I think you probably are right. Yes, if we might just remain like this for another few years to go.
That's really that won't be too good, and it's worrisome actually if we are to look at it that way. Now, what also happens to the global stocks in its entirety? Now, that's if countries continue to, if we have the third wave, because we don't know the second wave, we might even have the third wave. We're talking of new lockdowns everywhere. And even here in Nigeria, yes, vaccine distribution is also on, but of course, the conspiracy theory and all of that, government trying to advise people to take it, it's safe, and all of this. Do you think this would really affect that flow that we expect and that confidence, that investors' confidence? Would this affect it in any form if it happens?
That's a really good question. Last year, the minute the vaccine, was discovered that the pharmaceuticals were going to start working on vaccines, the markets actually heaved a sigh of relief, and everything just started jumping all over the place with hitting record highs. But it's not as simple as that. Because if you think about it, the pent-up demand in goods right now is arguably already been satisfied. Manufacturing sector seen a marked improvement in demand and general sentiment. Also, the US stocks have actually come under high pressure, particularly given the rapid rates of the 10-year bond, which I've just mentioned, a treasury yield. Information technology and consumer discretionary sectors, they've led to the downside because investors continue to rotate money, which I mentioned earlier on. And last year, things have really heavily been priced in, but now the rollout has actually been very slow. The market has priced all this thing already. Now the market, because if you think about it, the market is actually a leading indicator. It's not exactly the economy. So, and we need the global stocks. For example, in the UK economy actually relies on 80% external economy. So as effective as UK has been, which has actually been the most effective in the position, but it does rely on the global economy to do better, for it to do better. Hence why it's not doing great. The US has actually not been great either because it priced all these things in already last year. So for the global economy to actually revive and the stocks to feel it, because the stocks is always thinking 6 months ahead, then the world will have to have well, because even though people are working from home, the productivity has actually been more. However, it's not reflected, because if you cannot go out there, then of course there's no way you can really generate funds or generate income for yourself. So I think at some point we will see a few uncertainties again, a few volatility in the markets. That would happen. We would have to live with it. But for you to constantly see the measure of growth, even though I think a few days ago as well, the Fed chairman, Jim Powell, he did say they see the economy getting stronger, of course, but the market did not react. The market reacted initially, but then it just went back down. Yes, you might say all these things, but it has to be implemented. So I don't see ultimately, over the long term, the economy, the stock market would eventually go back up. We know that for sure. However, but in the long run, I think we should expect a lot of volatility. And if you're going to have to plan at all, don't look way too far ahead. Or, just you've got to be very more strategic in your planning. And that's what you have to be doing. And you've got to be very careful. You don't want to throw everything you've got in the market right now. You want to go in blindly. I think it might lead to a lot of disruption for you and for your money.
Mr. Nifade, a little bit away from stocks, but still talking finance. You see, and I know you're following the news, the central bank has tried to attract foreign remittances into the country by introducing the Naira for dollar scheme. And some are saying this looks like a step in the right direction. We see increase in foreign exchange inflows since this has started. What do you make of this policy of the central bank? Are foreigners like you, those abroad, reacting to this?
I think it's a really forward-looking plan. But however, one thing you've got to think about, you're scoring an own goal, because if you think about the rates of the dollar right now to the Naira, it's not encouraging at all. It's actually, the increase is actually more than, what the government said is they will give $5 for every $100. Okay, that's fine. But if inflation and the rates of foreign exchange is actually going more than what the government will give you, like I said again, you're scoring an own goal and you're more or less slapping yourself and you will be jubilating. So I think not many people will be looking to that. I haven't actually taken data, but if you ask me personally, would I do such? Even though I find it encouraging, I still think the government needs to do more to encourage investors, external investors from Nigeria, to plunge in the foreign exchange into the country. I still think they need to do more, but that is a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, more still needs to be done.
Now, the stock market also, of course, as a barometer of any economy, you can measure what's happening, talking about what you see at the markets. With all of these challenges, do you see the market playing its role in 2020, 2021, as we move to 2022? Are you seeing the market playing that investment role in all of it, in its entirety, following vaccine rollouts, acceptance of vaccines? Are you seeing the market becoming so active as we move on?
Well, the market's always been the best when it comes to best economic engine in terms of giving people. When it comes to wealth creation, you've got real estate, you've got all sorts of equities out there. But when it comes to the market's always been the best out there. The market will always play its role. It's the biggest. It's a forward-looking indicator. The market is not the economy. However, it factors certain angles or criteria, properties of the economy before it makes its decision. Again, the market thinks 2-3 years ahead sometimes, but even though I tend to look at the market about 6 months always. So the market will always play its role. And the key thing is, if you think about it, last year, Nigeria's market was the best performing in the whole world. This year, it hasn't really been impressive, unfortunately. So the market will always play its role, but we need the economy to perform well for the market to be able to factor that metric into its indicators, and then for that to lead into positive investor sentiments. So yes, the market will always play its role. However, it leads and the economy follows. But if it doesn't think the economy is going in the right way, if it doesn't think the macro indices are going in the right way, or if it doesn't factor the sentiment, because if you look at the market itself, whatever price you see there, it just thinks it's fairly priced, whether it's up or down. That market thinks that price is fair. So it depends on the sentiments. It depends on the macro indices. It depends on the government policies as well. So both macro and even micro also. So yes, so the market actually relies on all of us for it to perform. It would always play its role, but you count on you and I, and of course the leaders who are making, or the guys in charge who are making these rules, these regulations, who are calling the shots.
You talked about it, and I'll wrap up on that note. The Nigerian market did so very well, talking about the figures that came out at the end of last year. But let me just ask you if we can do this very briefly. We see a shift to the fixed income side when you talk of the Nigerian market at the moment, and that is affecting yields. As of today, the market is again down about 1.33%. That's talking about the Nigerian market. What do you make of this?
Well, that's actually a shame. But I've got to say, investors in Nigeria have to understand they're not alone. They're not alone here. The performance of the stock market worldwide has actually not been the best. We had a great run last year, worldwide, both Nigeria, which I was a participant, Nigeria, the United States, of course, with the UK lagging behind overall, which I've mentioned earlier. But now, with the vaccine rollout, with the risk attached to with the economy, we don't know what's looking ahead. And that's the market telling you, listen, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months. But if you think about China's actually been the world's best performance, which has been in terms of consistency. And why have they done that? If you think about, number one, they've actually been very effective when it comes to the dealing with COVID, and post-COVID area. So, and that's why the government, the Chinese government, for example, they actually have been very relaxed with people not being serious about vaccination. So, but it's reflected in the economy, in Chinese economy and the stock market. But with the other countries being very relaxed, I think Nigeria is quite relaxed as well with the lockdown. And of course, with things in consideration, you've got to really understand that what's in the first world may not necessarily work in Nigeria when it comes to lockdown. There's so many indications you have to tie in before you just shut down or lock down everybody. Because Nigeria is a very physically based economy. You rely on people compared to other worlds whereby it's more digitized. So these things cannot actually be broadly measured, in terms of yardstick. We can't just measure them, shoulder to shoulder. They all depends on different metrics. But I've got to say, overall, though, we still need people need to go out there. People need more confidence. They need that support to say, listen, for you to go out there, you need that confidence. And of course, people need to obey. Yes, whether you take the vaccines or not, but you need to obey the government's social distancing rules and regulations. And of course, you've got to curb the spread. And that's the only way the economy will be able to lift up. And you will see that from the stock markets.
Indeed, we will see that from the stock market. Investment analyst, stock coach, and the founder of Wealth Hackers, Mr. Gbenga Onifade, live from the UK. Thank you very much for your time. It's really good to see you again.
Thank you.